I'm here today to talk about art, culture, grief and loss in a time of crisis. But first, I want to return to the year 2020. A coup in Malaysia in February toppled the 2018 government, the first new government in 60 years that had won on a platform of hope and change. The coup was a shady and complicated backdoor maneuver called the Sheraton move. The new government used COVID-19 as an opportunity to seize power effectively and with little fuss to govern despite a lack of legitimacy, delaying the opening of parliament for as long as they could. And to be fair, did a good job initially. They were widely praised at home and abroad for flattening the curve. And rightly so, it appeared, although detractors say they were simply implementing pandemic measures that had already been put into place. Whatever the reasons, Malaysia looked like one of the countries that had done things right. The Director General of Health, who did the daily briefings, became a local hero, with his image springing up everywhere, including murals on buildings. These were sometimes next to politicians, who were also being fetishized in the same murals. Feudalism is still very much part of our cultural makeup. It was telling that the first very public pieces of COVID-inspired art featured politicians. It is also telling, however, that it wasn't long before those same politicians were defaced. So not everyone wants to eulogize leaders here, and there is a healthy desire to keep leaders in their place. Mockery and satire is also very much part of our cultural makeup. This is a country where the folk tales of Sang Kanchil the mouse deer are very much loved. Despite his small size, he takes on the big predators in the jungle, especially the crocodile, using his wit, cunning, and small size to his advantage. He is a much loved prankster. This prankster spirit is very much alive still in Malaysia. This prankster spirit ran wild in the early days of the pandemic. The hapless Minister of Health quickly became an object of mockery in memes, tweets, and TikTok videos, proclaiming, amongst other things, that warm water was a good way to destroy the coronavirus. His demonstration of this on national TV was widely parodied. Many other ministers were also quickly lampooned for various gaffes. The Malaysian sense of humour was evident with the rapid spread of satirical responses. The level of anxiety that's apparent today hadn't kicked in yet. Instead, Malaysians were getting down to coping on their own as they usually do. The hashtag Kita Jaga Kita, we'll take care of each other, created by novelist Hannah Alkaf, was quickly adopted by the general public, and Malaysians rolled up their sleeves and organised food and goods to affected communities. All communities were taken care of, including transgender sex workers and other LGBTQ groups. But as the CMO turned into the EMCO, levels of anxiety rose. I'm not sure exactly when the first anti-immigrant and anti-refugee sentiments arose. A history of pandemics will reveal that xenophobia is part and parcel of pathogens. Organizations who had long worked on migrant issues were divided as to the cause. Some felt it was the work of government cyber troopers, set out to create a common enemy and unify the public against them. Others felt it was latent Malaysian racism. The government, however, was high-handed in the treatment of undocumented workers, rounding them up in army trucks and sending them to detention centers. Images of barbed wire, of crying women being herded onto trucks and children as young as 5 years old in handcuffs spread quickly, despite efforts by the FRU to intimidate journalists. Foreign news agencies were accused of spreading lies about the treatment of undocumented migrants. Malaysians became deeply divided by these reports, and ugly xenophobia reached its apex with activists receiving hate messages and threats. Some argue that Kita Jaga Kita should be Kita Jaga Semua, asking that we take care not just of each other, but of everyone. The pandemic was bigger than all of us. Activists and artists worked together for several days of art and activism to celebrate the humanity of migrants under the banner Migrant Juga Manusia. The Migrant Juga Manusia hashtag trended on Twitter, but the migrant issue continued to divide and continues to divide people even today. The Refugee Festival, an annual festival that hasn't been in place since 2017, went online, but the organizers felt that many refugees did not want to participate for fear of repercussions. An Al Jazeera report on the treatment of migrant workers sent the government and half the population into a bitter frenzy. It became a country deeply divided. What was clear was that 60 years of race-based politics was translating itself into anti-foreigner sentiment. My theatre company did a Zoom production of a play called Para, a play that deals with race relations in Malaysia. In the play, 4 young friends of different backgrounds quickly become divided along racial lines. All it took was for one incident to split the friends and bring racial inequalities and a history of racial hurt and fear to the surface. If everyone is a pendatang or immigrant, asks one of the characters, then who is the tuan rumah? Who is the master of the house? All these anti-immigrant sentiments brought into focus our cultural baggage of deeply embedded racialized discourse and politics. Perhaps the art that comes out of COVID-19 will allow us to look at how connected we are globally. Perhaps it will allow us an understanding of death and allow us to have sympathy and empathy not only for our fellow man, but for the environment that sustains us. The reaction to the documentary on Netflix, My Octopus Teacher, makes me think that grief and loss will take us towards a better understanding and empathy of others, whether human or animal. Perhaps artists will now, more than ever, try to see art as not confined to national borders, that friends exist as far away as Sweden, and what affects them there affects us too. Perhaps artists will make work that reflects even more the borderless world we are inhabiting, and we can go past the anti-immigrant sentiments that are part of the exhausting nationalist narrative. Because if death is stalking us, we can only have empathy and understanding for our fellow human being. We can only share a bowl of milk and strawberries and wait our time out in the sun.